Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Hello from Seattle. My name is Brian. I lead our global business applications, ISV business, and it's my honor and pleasure to welcome three people from SK Global, Scott, Tim, and Rick. All people that are leaders in their organization, and we're going to have a really deep and rich conversation about banking and treasury. And for those of you who are not familiar with that, it's such an amazing experience for business transformation for our organizations. And I thought, gosh, we do this every Monday, as everyone knows, at 8 a.m. Pacific Coast time, and a great opportunity that I'll shortly introduce all three of them. Before we get started, as you see below, we'd love to get engagement from where people are watching from. As we do these things on a weekly basis, I'm always impressed with, gosh, the reach that this has gone to all over the world. Granted, we don't typically have people in Asia. I'm still waiting for someone in Australia or somewhere in Asia to say, hey, I'm watching really late. It hasn't happened yet, which is understandable because it's super late in the Asia time zone. But in Europe and in Americas, of course, please post where you're watching from because we'd love to get engagement. The other thing that will happen is that throughout this conversation, if there's something that you'd like to ask a question of Scott, Tim, or Rick from SK Global, please type it in the window, or if you like the commentary, use one of the engagements at the bottom, the like, the support, etc. Because again, we'd love to ensure that this content and information is super relevant for the people watching. So a quick shout out. We actually have, it's great, we have someone from Copenhagen, Denmark present. So Mads, thanks for making a comment there. And so let's go ahead and get started, team. So Scott, Tim, and Rick, why don't you give all three of you background on each of you, where you're actually from, because of course, Rick, it's pretty obvious. Someplace sunny. We were talking about the pre-show with your background. You can talk about the background picture, but yeah, let's go with Scott. We'll go to Tim, and then go with Rick, and then as we always do with these, is talk about one thing also that's not on your LinkedIn profile that you'd be open to sharing with the people watching in the audience.
Cool. Thanks, Brian. Scott Caudle. I'm the CEO of SK Global Software. I've been with SKG almost 6 years now, so it's been a wild journey so far. It's been great. My background is kind of finance, accounting, CPA. Started out in that area of the world, and then made my way into consulting. Kind of jumped on the Y2K bandwagon, if anybody's out there old enough to remember that. And got involved with Microsoft Dynamics actually back in the mid 90s. So I've been working with Microsoft Dynamics customers for 25 years now. It's amazing. It's been a long journey, and it's been an exciting one. You know, some interesting things about me. I'm from Houston, Texas, but I grew up in the Midwest. So I'm kind of I like nature, and I love trees and gardening and all that great stuff. And sort of an interesting fact about me that I think Brian and I have in common is the first movie I ever saw was Star Wars, right? So I've been on this sort of lifelong trek now of Star Wars fandom. And last year, when no one could go in anywhere, I kind of made this pact with myself. I was going to wear a different Star Wars T-shirt every single day of the week because I could. So I did that for about 3 months. Then I ran out, but that's a little fun fact about me.
Oh, I love it, Scott. And it's apropos because, as you know, you can imagine, May the 4th is coming. Yeah. And of course, for those of you, I'll just give a quick shout out because May the 4th this year is actually the timing of our business application summit, our Microsoft Business Application Summit. So kind of apropos with the Star Wars theme and actually having our annual Microsoft Business Application Summit ready. So thanks, Scott, for sharing. We'll come back to you because we're going to have you kick us off with the next question. So Tim, we'll go to you and give a little background on yourself and what's one thing that's not on your LinkedIn profile.
Sure. Thanks, Brian. Nice to see everyone this morning, this afternoon, wherever you are. So my journey starts over 35 years ago. As when I wrote my first application dealing with banking integration. And so there's been a thread for the last 35 years. Been very fortunate to work in a company for that period of time. So I don't have a lot of experience bouncing around or doing work with other companies. Rick and I joined up in the 90s. And so it's been a great journey and certainly learned a lot and continue to learn a lot as banking integration continues to expand as time goes on. So one thing that's probably not on my LinkedIn profile is that ever since college, I got very involved with Transcendental Meditation, TM. Right out of college, I've been practicing meditation for those many years. I won't say how long. And so it's been a very important part of my life and very valuable for my personal life and, of course, for the profession as well. So that's probably something not known about me widely. So.
Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing, Tim. And it's super apropos because I do Peloton. I have a Peloton at home. And of course, there's all these digital classes that you can take. And one of the classes, of course, when the pandemic started, that I try to take consistently is meditation, because it's one of those things where you get in this meditative state and all that stuff. So we'll have to share stories and journeys. And it's probably, I'd love to learn a little bit more what you mentioned, because I'm like, I don't know if I've ever heard of that term. Maybe I know about it. But anyway, I appreciate you sharing that. That's great.
Sure. Yeah.
Rick, we'll go to you to kind of wrap up the intros.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Well, I'm a Star Wars fan, yes, but I'm actually more of a Star Trek fan. And had I had time when I thought about it, this tapestry behind me would have been a Starfleet command tapestry.
What is the bridge?
Yeah, right. Along those lines, something that I think a lot of people do know about me, but isn't on my LinkedIn profile, is my wife and I lived on our sailboat for 8 years. And then after that, we traveled around the country in a land yacht for a year and a half. So after seeing Andy Yeomans on the HSO presentation, he's talking about traveling around in his RV. I'm going to have to reach out to him. We'll have to compare some notes there. But during that time, being connected through the internet, I mean, there were times that I was off the coast of Florida doing a demo, to some partner or customer or what have you. I don't know if is this a good time to talk about how we came about, or is this that later in your agenda?
Yeah, let's hold. So after we go back to Scott, we talk about what does SK Global do and the joint council we saw. We're going to come back to you, Tim and Rick. So for everyone watching, okay. Tim and Rick are actually the co-founders of SK Global. So one of the things that I don't even know is, like, how did it even get founded? We're going to come back to that question. So hold that question, okay. Rick, and we'll get back to you on that. So a couple of quick other shout outs. It's great to see we have someone from Brazil. So Daniel, thank you for dialing in, from watching from Brazil. And of course, for some reason, I don't know why Aaron Maselli is showing anonymous, but this is I have it on my streaming on my phone. So Aaron Maselli, of course, someone who works super closely with the SK Global team. Thank you so much for watching from, of course, Redmond, or the Seattle area where I'm from as well. So Scott, let's go ahead and kind of kick us off with the kind of the gist of the dialogue. Is give everyone who's watching, or maybe watching live or watching the replay, what does SK Global do? Of course, people who saw the event, they saw banking and treasury, but of course, if they're not a finance person, CFO, or et cetera, who's in that deep space regarding ERP, give people an idea of the SK Global capabilities, and then what are the outcomes we saw together between SK Global and Microsoft?
Sure. No, thanks, Brian. I think historically, if you go back, to let's say to the 90s and even the 2000s, SK Software, as it was known then, was primarily known as the e-banking company. And so if you had to send an electronic payment to, through your bank, and you didn't want to have to deal with all those complexities of integration, SK Software was one of the key vendors and provided solutions in that area. What's happened in I could say maybe the last 5 to 7 years is there has been a dramatic increase in focus around what I call automation in a lot of different areas of business process. And, of course, that's where we work so closely with Microsoft and what they're trying to do. But we've evolved as our product has evolved into a fully embedded banking and treasury automation piece of software. And so when you look at the different processes behind AP, so everything from invoice to pay, or if you're looking at AR and it's invoice to cash, or you're looking at the bank, all of your different bank accounts, and a lot of processes that are required to do what I call financial automation, automate the back office and close out the books and support, working capital management and liquidity management. We looked at all those processes and said, how could we make those, even better and more automated? So if you look at our solutions today, and we can obviously get into some of those details, that's where we really shine with Microsoft, because Microsoft provides an excellent foundation of all those different processes within their dynamic solution suite. And then we look at the customers, the vendors, the third parties, the banks, and we say, how can we connect all these pieces together and automate these processes in both a secure, controlled environment? And that's really what we've turned into is an automation company for back office.
That's great, Scott, because you think about everything you just described, and people may not see it because it's one of those things behind the scenes, and finance and operations, or where it is enterprise resource planning, and the whole, to your point, accounts receivable, accounts payable process that people don't see. But every company has to do this. Is that a fair? Would that be a fair assessment? Like everyone has.
Everybody pays bills, and everybody collects some kind of revenue somehow. So
that's right.
It's non for profit. So it's a very horizontal solution set that we have for sure.
Yeah, that's great. So this is probably really relevant. Let's go back to you, Rick and Tim. Tell us a little bit about the background journey, because I would find it super interesting. I think the audience would find it as well. Like, how did SK Software, because as Scott mentioned, it started that way. How did you and Tim, Rick and Tim, how did you guys start the organization, identify that this is an area where you wanted to actually build some IP around it to become an ISV, that then to build that with Microsoft? Like, tell us about that journey.
You want me to do that, or would you like to do that, Tim?
I guess we got to keep it relatively short because we could go on for an hour and a half. So.
Yeah, we could.
Give a hack at it, Rick. Go ahead.
Okay, so as Tim mentioned to you before, his background is programming, and he actually wrote the early e-banking functionality. My background was accounting, and I was actually a reseller in the mini computer world, doing what our partners are doing with D365 today, but this was back in mini computers. And then I got involved in what is today SL, was Solomon back then. Saw an opportunity. Tim and I happened to meet at a conference in '94, I think it was, and walked through the Henry Ford Museum and got to know one another, found out we lived 10 miles from one another, and we decided that we'd get together and build a solution for SL, which was around manufacturing, because I was consulting with manufacturers. We actually embarked on a train trip that was a 2-week train trip going from Washington to Chicago to Denver to Sacramento to Seattle, back across to Minneapolis, et cetera, until we ended up in Washington, back in DC. And we met with partners along the way. I wrote the operator's manual for the software, and Tim actually brought it to life in software. And we would just talk about rapid development, and we would stop and show it to partners that we met with. And at the end of that 2 weeks, we had a deliverable product that we launched in Monterey the year after that. And that's where SandlerCon software came from.
I love it. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, and then later in the 2000s, Scott came into the picture because we'd had e-banking, and he was involved with SL and Great Plains and then AX. And he said, we've got to bring in the stuff that Great Plains had. So very early on in the 2000s, Scott became part of our ecosystem until 2015, where he became our CEO. So kind of wraps up the travel there.
I love it. I mean, what a great story. It's like a whistle-stop tour with software.
That's exactly what it was.
I don't know if you ever have, like, if you ever needed an icon, it's like you could also, you could take a train to be kind of that experience.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Like, I learned something new. I didn't even know that that's how you guys got founded, and look where you're at now. I mean, supporting the business application ecosystem, and of course the crown jewel of Dynamics 365 and the F&O business and the enterprise, which of course you also support the legacy scenarios as well. But that's a good scenario to come back to you, Scott, on what are some of the noteworthy trends that you're seeing from your standpoint on banking and treasury automation, because of course that's something that's a business process that's been, of course, pretty well defined and so well known, but a lot of it is people utilizing very manual processes to go do that, or they're using legacy applications or even older technology from Microsoft to kind of keep those things going. So from where you're sitting, what are some of the trends that I think are noteworthy to share with the audience, the people watching?
Oh, thanks, Brian. I think from my perspective, when I started getting into, let's say, treasury, I was like, treasury, that sounds a little bit big and scary. And I know whenever I talked to a company about treasury, it was always like, oh yeah, we paid like, $50,000 for one user for this one little computer that sits in the corner, and it took like a year to implement, and it really doesn't integrate to anything. And we're not really sure why we needed it, but somebody said we had to get it because we had like, some finance thing we had to do. And so I think what, for me is I learn more about, the banking and treasury. And that's one thing about me is I read, 4 hours a day about all kinds of different subjects. But I schooled up on treasury and went to some different treasury certification areas. And what I saw was kind of this sort of these legacy concepts around these, these big picture treasury things. And then as you sort of peeled it back and you realize that what 70 to 80% of what companies were trying to solve is really just day-to-day liquidity, cash management. And all that sort of sits on those two pillars, or, the three pillars we talked about already, which is everybody has, an AP department, and they have vendor relationships and they're paying bills, which factors into your cash flow. And then on the AR side, it's the same thing. You're sending invoices and you're receiving payments, and you're having to apply those payments. And then, the different banks and the bank accounts that you work with. So, the trend I see is that companies now realize that they can get a tremendous amount of benefit from, let's just call it, banking and treasury automation, just taking the functionality they already have in their back office ERP and automating those processes back to their stakeholders, whether that be a bank or your vendors or your customers. So to me, it's sort of interesting, right? We hear about, when I think of digital transformation, I probably think about, big data or artificial intelligence, and those are important things, and they'll be important in our industry as well. But it's even more fundamental than that. When you just look at your core back office processes and how you handle AP or AR, or just basic cash management. I mean, one thing you can do is you can automate all the different activities that are happening in your bank statement, which everything from loans that you have or transfers of cash between different divisions. There's a lot of accounting that's going on there. And so, I see the trend as being companies saying, hey, you know what? How much of this can we get done in our back office ERP that we've already invested in? Do we really have to go buy, a third party, treasury workstation to do those things? And then if you really need, full blown hedge management, or you're really doing something very sophisticated in the financial arena, then there are tools out there to do that. But I see one of the trends is sort of a redefinition of what is banking and treasury. And to me, it's automating all those fundamental processes behind liquidity management.
No, thanks, Scott, for going through that. I would say, gosh, the ability for what you guys have done, the transformation for organizations, is that to make not only the process more efficient, and that time savings, you can imagine, I don't know what the days it would take if someone was manually doing it versus once they truly take advantage of the capabilities SK Global software can bring. But can you kind of size for people listening, like how does that transformation, what would that look like from, it could be weeks down to days or maybe hours? Like, is that the type of scenarios that we're talking about when we truly have people look at the automation and the cost savings for accuracy as well? Because I'm sure that plays a lot, as well as making sure the transactions of money floating around can get lost if it's very manual versus if it's automated. It's very predictable on how long it's going to take to do something, but also the time of not having errors occur because it's automated. It's something that humans don't have to miss a decimal point or miss some type of number that may get lost between transactions.
Yeah, no, for sure. And our Scandinavian partners, who we may have some of those on the call with us, the Scandinavian countries have always been, high productivity per person. And when you look at why that is, they really invest in automation. And there's a lot of things you can do with automation. So, I can just give you a couple examples. I know one company has saved at least one entire week of one person's time with one solution that we offered. We've had companies particularly that deal a lot with sort of manual processes of applying payments and settling accounts receivable. It transformed their entire department. They might have had a very low matching ratio, maybe down, 15, 20%, and now they're up to 75, 80% matching those coming in the door, which, may not sound, it's kind of hard to connect what that really does in terms of impact. But even our organization, SK Global Software, we ourselves are in the process of eating our own dog food and implementing Dynamics and all the pieces there that come along with that. And for us to scale our business, it's going to have a tremendous impact on us because we ourselves have thousands of customers. And when you're dealing with all that many entities and you have to make sure that the invoicing is done correctly and it goes to the right place. Right. And when the money comes back in, that you can recognize who did it come from and apply it properly. And anybody who's in accounting world knows if you start making mistakes, the cost of correction and communication and customer sat and all those things, so when you say, like, what does our solution really provide? Not only does it provide immediate benefit in terms of, automating some back office processes that people have to do manually otherwise, but think about all the other intangible savings you're getting from better customer sat, not having to make all these corrections and dealing with that too. So I know for sure most of our partners tell us that one of the primary reasons they do like to implement our software immediately is because a lot of companies get what I call kind of ERP. It takes a long time sometimes to get all those benefits. And when they look at our solution, it goes in so quickly and they're like, wow, okay, this is why we implemented ERP. We wanted these kind of benefits rapidly. And I think that's really where we shine.
I love it, Scott. And we're going to come back to this topic because we're going to have Tim also provide a great point of view of the joint success stories. Before we get to Rick to talk about kind of that journey with the Microsoft ecosystem, a couple of other quick shout outs for people as they were listening. I didn't get a chance to say thanks, Nathan, for dialing in from Ohio. Appreciate you making the time to kind of listen to the dialogue. And then, of course, John, pretty close to Ohio from Chicago, listening as well. So we're on with the SK Global team. And so if you have any questions, as you see in the ticker symbol below, feel free, because we have about 7 minutes left. Feel free to ask any questions that may pop up, and we might take it, depending on what comes through, might go a little bit longer and ask those questions. So if you have a question of Scott, Tim, or Rick about treasury, banking automation, or SK Global in general, don't hesitate to put it in the IM window. So Rick, we'll come to you and just talk about what's the journey been with just the Microsoft ecosystem. Of course, you work super closely with someone on my team, Aaron Maselli, because SK Global is a global ISV in our Microsoft ecosystem, and it's been such a great partner for so many years. Give a sense for the people, like, what has that journey been for someone who's been in the ecosystem for so long? What has that been like?
It's been at times it's been slow, but at times it's been like, your hair's on fire. It's we started working with Pat Fitzhenry, who we knew back in the SL days. And, I'm glad that we have the team we have. I mean, it was great working with him. I'm glad we have the team we have now with you and Aaron Maselli. Our model, as you know, is we sell our software predominantly through the partner channel. Mm-hmm. So right from the beginning, our focus has been on building relationships with the partner channel. And Microsoft is essentially one of those partners, the biggest partner. So the ability to work with you guys and have you help us get the word out to the Microsoft ecosystem has really been very valuable to us. I mean, we've noticed a real uptick in our business over the past couple of years, to the point that we're on a hiring trend. Where our business has been expanding, and so the ISV Connect program, while we've been slow being involved in that too closely, we've been riding along with it to the point where we're saying, this is starting to work. And so now we're looking forward to even the next year where word is starting to spread, because we are getting more contact from Microsoft sellers that are reaching out to us. And of course, what we do is we always ask the question, is there a partner involved, and who is that partner, and move that forward. So yes, it's been valuable, and we're looking forward to growth.
No, I appreciate that, Rick. Yeah, it is one of those things where you're spot on, because the journey with Microsoft is it is a journey because of the thousands and thousands of people to get connected to, but trying to remove the complexity through the work that you do with us at a global level to ensure that we're getting you exposure to the right things. And then, of course, the partner-to-partner channel, where the thousands of Microsoft partners, not just on the ISV side, but also on our software integration side, that, to your point, in almost every single Dynamics implementation I've ever seen, there's always a partner there, whether it be an ISV or SI, and making sure those come together. So I appreciate those thoughts. So to build upon what Scott was saying, Tim, on the customer journey and some examples, I mean, from your perspective, what are some other joint successes that you've seen? Like Scott had some amazing stories about the transformation that some organizations have had with SK Global software. What are some of the ones that you've seen from your technology perspective that have been transformational from your experience?
Sure. So it's a bit of a challenge to pick out of the hundreds of customers we have. I mean, we've got a lot of success stories, but one that comes to mind is that really leverages what we do and what our expertise is that this is a global resourcing company. They connect many continents around the world, and their challenge was they had to make payments to people in 150 countries, 150 banks across the world. And so the what we bring to the table is hundreds of formats, hundreds of banks, hundreds of payment methods that we support globally. So to provide that library to them with a third party managing it for them, it just took that complexity out of their scope. And so it's been very, very successful with them, very valuable to get those payments on time. And then on the other hand, we have customers that are more local and regional, and they have more simplified requirements. Maybe they just deal with one bank. But the other thing we provide that Scott kind of alluded to is we provide that full automation. So can you imagine you're sitting and you want to make a payment and you're using the workflow solution in Dynamics 365, and a workflow gets completed. And at that moment, this file goes out the door, it goes over to our integration platform, it goes to the bank accepts the payments, the bank then sends back a return file, the return file automatically comes back to that payment journal, and the payment journal gets posted. That all occurs with one button click for one workflow completion in D365. So it's very, very powerful solution for anyone that's looking for that digital transformation automation, as well as those that have that global reach and need the complexity. We have a great partner. We have great partners in Europe that are doing this as well, and we're about to expand more into the APAC as well with a master of our relationship there as well.
No, thanks, Tim, for sharing that, because you can imagine, gosh, when you mentioned your first example of the stories of the banks, I can't imagine how complex that can be with the different routing numbers, but like just as a personal, someone who, of course, all of us use banks in some form or fashion, and just the complexity, I think, about trying to deal with one bank versus 150. And I love the story of like a one-click experience when it's all set up correctly, a one-click experience to automate that, and the time savings and the cost savings that is evolved. That's why I love hearing those stories, because when we think about business, all of us are business process people. When you can automate in the right, effective way business process, that's where cost savings and time savings and all this stuff can really come to bear.
And as you can imagine, during this time of COVID, actually our business, we're one of the blessed businesses that has ramped during that time, because people, working remotely and they wanted more automated processes. It's been a very, very big uptick in our business.
Yeah, no, thanks, Tim. Yeah, because when you have such a tragedy with a pandemic, it's interesting to see the transformation that organizations just naturally occur. And it's so great to hear the benefits that it's coming to you guys, because people are looking for this. Well, it kind of forced the transformation to occur, because they realize, okay, I can't do these types of inefficiencies anymore, and accelerate that dialogue. Similar to scenarios of like, who would have thought that you could drive up and someone's going to bring your product that you bought into your car and put it in the trunk of your car? Like,
yeah.
just those types of things is just mind-boggling in the way that it's changing our industry, because those things aren't going to go away now. Now people have proven out these things can happen. Similar to what we're doing now, it's like people doubting the fact that, oh, can you really work from home and have employees be productive? Well, it's proven out for a year that it's possible. So I love it. Thanks, Tim, for sharing it. So I guess the last question, I'm just looking in again, as we wrap up, team, if there are any questions that people may have, they'd like to ask Scott, Tim, or Rick, feel free to put it in the LinkedIn window. But I think we can, we're almost at the time, so we can just talk about call to action. So Rick, we'll go back to you and say, well, all the things that all three of you provided such great insight on is like, how would people find out more? Like how if they're watching live, if any of you are watching live, or maybe you watch this replay later today or a week from now or months from now, how can people learn more to kind of get started, or just like learn about like, hey, I have this issue with automation in my banking and treasury process. Like maybe I should reach out to you guys. Like what are some of the call to actions that you would recommend people take, Rick and team?
Sure. So probably the first thing, as I mentioned to you before, we have invested heavily in building our relationships with our partners. So if there's a customer that's interested, I would suggest that they talk to their partner first, because chances are that partner has worked with us before. And always go to our website, which is sksoft.com, and we're constantly adding content there. We're going to be announcing some scheduled webinars where we have done that in the past, but that we're finding that's giving us some traction. You can always reach out to me, Tim, or Scott via LinkedIn, and reach out to your Microsoft representative, because as you can see, we're getting to be pretty well known there. I will say that the two most important things to us are the quality of our software and our reputation, and that's allowed us to grow the way we have and take advantage of the visibility that Microsoft has been giving us. And that bears itself out in the fact that we've been Inner Circle the last 4 years, and prior to that, before the President's Club went away, we were President's Club for 13 years running. So that also speaks to our relationship with Microsoft.
Yeah, well, and there are the things that you do for us. I mean, it's a joint partnership and alignment. So thank you so much, Rick. And team, I put in the window something that we compiled that also gives a nice summary to the solutions that are listed on our marketplace, but also a brief summary of all the capabilities that Scott and the team had touched upon. And so as we wrap up, Scott, Tim, and Rick, well, thank you so much for spending time on a Monday to share amazing points of view. And I learned, myself just learned a ton on just some backgrounds of each of you, but just also the journey that SK Global had taken many years ago on how SK Global got started. That's a great story. So Scott, Tim, and Rick, any last minute parting questions before we wrap up the live session, or comments before we wrap up the session?
Yeah, I would just like to say to thank you, Brian. You and your team have been just fabulous, helping us propel our business forward and encouraging us. So I thank you for that.
Certainly echo that in Ermaselli as well.
Yeah. I'm sure Rayerso appreciates it, because I'm pretty sure he's probably still listening. So thank you so much, Rick. And
we'll make him listen later.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, I'll make sure that he listens to the replay. Yeah. And Scott, yeah, we'll wrap up with you. Any last minute comments?
Just thanks for the opportunity. I'm a big believer knowledge is power, and the more we can learn from each other and share with each other about how we can improve our businesses and improve our employees' lives, that's what we're all about. So thanks for the opportunity.
No, my pleasure, team. So everyone watching, thanks again so much for allocating time. Or if you watch the replay, thank you for making the time to watch it. We do this every Monday, absent of a holiday or me being on vacation without internet access. We're here every Monday at 8 o'clock. So next week, we have another ISV, newer to the program, much different than SK Global, called Clarebridge. that we're going to get some really good insight about what they do in the customer voice scenario, and also their emergence in the Microsoft ecosystem, because they're somewhat of a net new ISV to our business. So thanks again, SK Global software team, Scott, Tim, and Rick, for the time. Stay well, be safe. Looking for the opportunity to, again, engage so that we can actually have great conversations over dinner, where I can treat you out to dinner and engage face to face. So thanks again, everybody.
Look forward to it. Thanks a
Thank
lot,
you.
Brian.
Take care. Be well, everybody. Take care.
Thank you, everybody.